Hello everyone. Today we are going to cover the very exciting topic of paperwork. So, record keeping for yoga teachers. And it might not seem as exciting, but it is really important. So, during your teacher training and once you start developing a yoga teaching practice, record keeping is going to be a really important part of that teaching practice. So, right now, if you're in the midst of teacher training, you're focusing a lot on developing all your teaching skills and strategies, developing your knowledge of yoga philosophy and anatomy and history and technique, and sharing amazing classes with your students. But we also have to focus on the other side of a teaching practice, and that is our admin. And it's not as fancy as guiding a yoga class, but it is critical to the health of your teaching practice. So we want to learn how to do that um, confidently and efficiently, right? So whether your plan is to teach a few classes a week at the studio or the gym, or you want to build your own full-time yoga teaching practice, it is really important to develop a routine for how you're going to maintain logs and records and paperwork. And if you're in the midst of teacher training now, these are habits that you're developing through your teacher training that we want you to carry on beyond teacher training. And they're going to be invaluable to you as you move into the world of yoga teaching. So today we're going to look at some practical strategies to maintain those records that you'll need for things like your professional membership, whoever you're going to register with, whether that be Yoga Alliance, Yoga Australia, Oz Active. We're going to look at, record keeping for managing your business and for keeping a clear record of your finances, right? So part of teacher training is the process of getting into the habit of creating and maintaining your logs and records. And these are the habits to start building now so that you can carry on once you're out in the world of teaching yoga. And some of you already have these skills, but for many of us, record management is a skill that takes time and focus to develop. And a part of this is understanding that it is important, and that a lack of confidence in maintaining these kinds of records can be an obstacle. So you want to start developing confidence in that. So, and this is important for things like maintaining and upgrading your professional memberships and being efficient and accurate in maintaining your business records and reporting your finances and paying your taxes. So today we're going to talk about all those sort of administrative tasks that you'll need to make a habit so that you can flow from teacher training into your professional teaching practice. Okay. So part of yoga teacher training is starting to maintain logs. And it's not just because I love reading your practice logs, although I do, something that you're going to maintain going forward. So during teacher training, you keep a few logs that I recommend maintaining after you've completed your course. That includes your practice log. And this is especially important if you're doing a 200-hour course, but it's great for everyone. But as a provisional 200-hour teacher, you may be required to maintain a practice log in order to gain professional membership. This is important to do regardless of what level of training you're doing. And just keeping a log, keeping brief notes on what your practice consists of, cool new sequencing ideas, prop uses, anything else that's going to support your ongoing learning. The minimum is tracking the date, the style of practice, the length of practice, and the location or the teacher, right? But it's great if you can keep those other notes as well, because it helps you keep a record and note down ideas that you want to start bringing into your own teaching, right? Another log is your ongoing learning log. So keeping a track of mentoring and coaching discussions like these, And also keeping track of books you read, podcasts you listen to, of course, courses that you attend. And this is going to help you in renewing your yoga memberships and updating your study hours in your yoga memberships. And it's also going to help you track the progress of your learning and what directions your learning takes, right? And the third log that you're keeping during teacher training and that I recommend you continue to keep after teacher training is your teaching hours. So right now, logging your teaching hours, even if it's to folks in your household, it's going to be important during your training and after, and especially if you want to upgrade your professional membership at some point, you're going to be required to submit a record of your teaching hours. You're going to be required to meet a certain number of hours and then submit that record. So that's something to start now and keep going with it, right? And just the basics on how to keep a log. I'm a fan of Excel. I think that's a really good program to maintain all those records in one place. But you can also use like a word processor like Word. You can keep a handwritten journal. I know lots of you like to do that. It's less easy to upload a handwritten log. You can use things like Google Sheets or numbers on if you're a Mac user. So there's any system that you want to keep your records. You've got the templates that are provided in your training portal, and you can just keep going with those templates if you want to. To the first question about professional memberships, depending on your membership, Yoga Alliance, Yoga Australia, Oz Active, they all have different requirements, but you will need to submit your ongoing learning every year or every 2 years. And in some cases, your practice and teaching logs so that you can renew your membership and at some point update your membership to another level. So keeping track of those things is a good idea. I know for some students, the digital calendar that they use is a way that they track that, and that's useful. Otherwise, maintaining a log of your practice hours, your teaching hours, and your study hours is important. You also want to keep a file, make a folder to keep track of all the courses that you attend, and that includes the receipt, the certificate of completion, and so that you can submit that to your membership body. And in the case of specialty trainings, like say you take a prenatal training or a kids yoga training, you'll need to submit those to your insurance company as well so that you can be covered for those special populations. Okay. And as I mentioned before, keeping track of all your teaching. So this is important to renew some memberships and essential if you want to upgrade your membership at some stage, right? I also want to keep track of a record of feedback and testimonials from your students. And you might not use those right away when you first start your teaching practice, but in future, those can be useful for your website, for your social media and other marketing. And of course, feedback also helps you to be aware of your teaching evolution and understand the experience that your students are having, right? So keeping a record back in testimonials is another thing that you might consider. Make a folder for that. So I am a fan of Excel as well. So it's all in one place: practice log, teaching log, study hours, the books I've read, the podcasts I've listened to. Keeping that all in one place is a really efficient use of your time to maintain that. And you might even block off a time once a week to do your record keeping, right? If it's not something that you do in the moment, after a day of teaching, you log your hours. That's not something I do. I don't find that an efficient use of my time, but I would go back at the end of a week and look at my calendar and log those hours, or at the end of a month. So that takes us to talking about tracking your income and expenses, which you could use Excel for. I do. You want to track all of your yoga income. So that includes teaching for others, if you're teaching for a studio or teaching for a gym, teaching your own classes, if you're running your own classes, maintaining a record of all yoga related income, right? Whether that be classes, private sessions, corporates, online teaching, writing, if you're a yoga writer, whatever income comes in related to yoga, you want to keep track of that. Obviously, if you run your own classes, you'll need to keep track of how much each student pays for how many classes, when those classes or that class pass expires. If you're using a system like Acuity or Mind Body Online, those systems will do that for you. In many cases, your payment gateway gives you the options to track these things. So if you're using Square or PayPal, or your website can help you with tracking these things. If you're using Wix or Offering Tree, they can help you keep track of all of that information. If you're working more analog, these records need to be updated with each class. And for this, you can use systems like Xero or QuickBooks or FreshBooks, or you can use a system like Excel. All the systems I've mentioned, everyone, tangent, every company out there wants the subscription cash these days. They all want you to have a monthly subscription. So if you're using QuickBooks or Xero or any of these systems, they're charging you a monthly fee to use their systems. If you're starting off small and you don't want to have a lot of monthly expenses, using something like Excel is a really budget-friendly option, right? You're not having to pay those subscription fees to keep track of the income from a few classes a month, right? That's not a good use of your cash. But it's when you're building a business and you've got a lot more transactions to process, that's when you might be looking at a system that can help you with that. You also want to be keeping track of your expenses, especially if yoga teaching is going to be more than a hobby income. And what's classified as hobbies, usually somewhere around $5,000 a year, depending on where you live. Then you're going to want to keep track of all your yoga related expenses, including this course that you're doing, books that you buy, attending classes, taking other courses, online subscriptions, any expenses you have for having a website, any equipment you buy like props, your professional membership, your insurance, venues that you hire, anything that you use for your business is an expense that needs to be tracked, right? And you'll also be wanting to log the use of your car. If you use your personal car for your yoga business, they like you to track how much you use your computer and phone for business if you're using these as business expenses as well. Don't tell them, but I refuse to do that. I refuse to do that. I spend too much time on my phone and computer for business for me to be tracking all of that time. That's not an efficient use of my time. But I just kind of generalize how much I'm using all of those things. As you build your business, if you're running a full-time business, you're going to have a business computer, a business phone, like that. It's going to be different. But when you're combining personal and business, you do want to keep some kind of log or record, or at least a very good guesstimate of how much you're using that. And speaking of big business, if you plan to run your own business, it is worth talking to an accountant to get set up for success. So have an initial consultation, talk about all the things that you're going to need to do to manage your business. And so you get started on the right foot, right? And understand all of your requirements for reporting, how often you're going to need to report, what you need to report, understanding what any tax thresholds are in your area. All of that your accountant can help you with. And so that's going to lead you to being able to do your taxes a little more easily. So with all this recording of your income and expenses, that's going to be useful when it comes time to report your tax. So depending on your yoga income or your blended income from all the income that you have, you might be reporting just your income. You might be reporting GST or HST on a yearly or a quarterly basis. If you plan to teach full-time, again, I would recommend having a consultation with an accountant to understand your tax obligations, because that's going to help you set aside funds to pay your taxes at the end of quarter or year end, so it doesn't come as a surprise down the road. You've been gathering, all your income, and then suddenly the government wants some of it. Of course they do. They have to pay for the roads you drive on. So knowing what your tax obligations are going to be and how much to set aside for that is going to be important. And at the same time, especially if this is a full-time income for you, you can be tracking what you'll put into your super or your retirement or your savings fund, right? For yourself. So taking what you're earning, a portion of that gets set aside for tax, a portion of that gets set aside for retirement, right? Yeah. So if you can make this a habit, something that you address every few days, every week, once a month, then it doesn't start to pile up on you and you forget key things that you should be logging, right? So making this a habit is going to make it more efficient. Thinking to yourself, oh, at the end of the day, the last thing I want to do is go and type into this Excel spreadsheet, but it'll take 10 minutes at the end of the day. Whereas if you wait a few months, all of a sudden it's a big and overwhelming job and you might miss things. And being accurate is important, especially when it comes to financial reporting. So making this a habit, it really does matter. I've known yoga teachers good at doing the yoga teaching and then lack confidence or haven't developed the habits of business management that they need to run their business. And, at year end, they find out they owe a whole bunch of funds in tax and they've been accruing interest on that because they haven't been reporting quarterly as they were supposed to. And you don't want to get yourself into those problems. So understand your obligations now. As you're growing your business, understand how those obligations might change so that you can be prepared for that. Making your admin, unless you're like me and you love doing admin, making your admin as efficient as possible means you'll spend less time doing admin. The beginning of your yoga teaching practice, you're spending a lot of time designing sequences and planning your classes. And, all of that takes a lot of time. It takes like an hour of planning to teach a 1 hour class. That time will reduce. You'll get more efficient at that so that you're spending less time planning and doing research and development per hour of teaching. The same thing goes with your admin. To get things set up, to get used to your strategies that you're going to use takes a little bit of time, but that time is going to be well worth it to make your process of management more efficient in the future. When I started my business, I was quite young. I had really good examples of entrepreneurs in my family. So I had some sense of how to run a business to a certain extent. But still, I was like 22 years old when I started my business. And I didn't know what I was doing. And a book that I read way back then, it's probably still around now. It was about being an entrepreneur. And they talked about when you run a business, you have to wear 3 hats. You have to be good at the thing you do, teaching yoga, baking pies, plumbing, whatever it is that you do. So you have to be good at the thing. You also have to be a good entrepreneur. You have to be able to go out there and say, hey, I'm a yoga teacher. I'd love for you to come to my class, right? So however you do that, talking to people, social media, a website, you have to be able to promote yourself so people know about you and then they'll come to your classes. And then the third thing is you have to be a good manager. You have to be able to keep an eye on what's happening in your business. Maintaining records, tracking the progress of your business, keeping track of your tax obligations, all of that falls under the management side. And some people really thrive in that area of their business. I'm going to generalize for a moment and say a lot of the yoga teachers I know don't thrive in that area. They're really good at doing the thing, teaching yoga. That's where they've poured their heart and soul. And they have less skill development and maybe less confidence in the management side. And so those are strategies to develop as well as you're developing your yoga teaching skills and strategies, is understand how to do that and figuring out how much help you need. So if you lack confidence and you lack skills, there's people out there that can help you, and there's systems out there that can help you in maintaining all of these logs. Okay. So that's something to think about. It is keeping records is part of life. It is part of adulting. You can grow to enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it now, you can grow to enjoy it. I mean, I'm saying this as a person who loves charts and I love keeping track of things. I find it very soothing to keep track of things. I don't keep track of everything. I never look at my website analytics. I don't pay any attention to what social media posts work versus what don't. Those are areas where I need to develop some skills and confidence. So I'm not across the board loving my admin, but the admin that I've developed systems for and that I've gotten advice about and that I've had some practice in, those are areas where that's an easy part of my business, right? That all flows. And so now I can turn my attention to maybe developing some other skills, right? Looking at my Google Analytics and doing something about them. I don't know what. I haven't researched it, so that's my job. So let's talk about some other things that you might need to be prepared to log and record. And one of them is incident reporting. And this isn't going to come up often in your yoga classes. So don't get concerned, but be prepared by having a template on file to record and report any incidents or injuries that happen in your classes. Again, this isn't going to happen often, but when it happens, or if it happens, your insurance company is going to need information from you. And your insurance company can provide you with a template to just note down, here's what happened. Someone came in the door and someone's water bottle had just spilled and they slipped on the water bottle, and this is what happened, and this is what I did. So your insurance company can give you a template for this kind of reporting, or you can find templates online. In the case that there has been an injury, those documents do need to be submitted to your insurance company and kept in your own files. If there hasn't been an injury, but you're concerned, you should still do an incident report and at least keep it in your own files. Say that person who slipped in the water comes back next week and says, I really hurt myself and I actually ended up having to go to the doctor and this is a problem. Then you've recorded it. You're not going to have to rely on a week ago's memory as to what happened to be able to report that to your insurance company. Okay. So be prepared with some kind of incident reporting template. Some of you might have experience with this already from another workplace. But if you're like me and you've never had any experience in having to do incident reporting, this is something to maybe add to your list of things to Google and a template to download and have on file. Okay. It's not advice that we want to hear that something might happen in class, but we've got these human bodies and sometimes our human bodies get into trouble. So we want to keep our students safe. We want them to have wonderful classes. But stuff can happen in a yoga class, and we want to be prepared to care for the person in the moment. And as part of caring for that person, an incident report can help them, if they're injured, recoup funds from any expenses from the insurance company and get better so they can come back to yoga. Area of reporting that we're going to look at is maintaining client files. So depending on what systems you use, you're going to be gathering personal information from your students. And the first rule of client information is that it has to be kept safe and secure. If someone's given you their information, now it's your job to keep that confidential and secure, right? If your clients are signing like paper intake forms, they need to be kept under lock and key. They can't be floating around your car when you go out with your friends on Saturday night. So those need to be kept secure if they're on paper. For the most part these days, people are registering online. So if you're gathering information from people online and storing it online, you need to be up to date on the security of your systems. whether that's forms in your website or you're using some kind of plugin or software, or you're keeping things on files on your phone or your laptop or your desktop. You need to be sure that those systems are secure so that your students' information is secure. If you can't keep people's information secure, don't keep people's information. You're going to, if you're taking digital payments through debit card or credit card or bank transfer, you're not going to be holding someone's credit card number. That's going to happen in your payment gateway. And so it's kind of up to the payment gateway that you choose to maintain their security. But if someone wants to give you their credit card number, don't have them email it to you or text it to you. If someone wants to give you their credit card number, maybe do that over the phone, write it down so that you can use it for whatever payment, and then redact it from your notes so that you're not holding someone's actual credit card number in your hands. Every time I log into, I use ANZ Bank in Australia, and every time I log into the bank, there's a big pop-up about scams. And it makes me, I don't naturally think about security, but it's a good thing. It's a good reminder that we do have to be careful with people's digital information and keeping people's information secure. Is that there's a lot going on out there right now with websites and businesses that hold people's information that haven't been secured correctly, and we want to make sure that whatever systems we use, they're as secure as they can possibly be, right? Next thing we'll talk about is calendars. So you will almost certainly get updates and reminders for any annual or regular subscriptions or memberships that you use. But sometimes those systems fail, and you are ultimately responsible for maintaining those things. So I recommend putting all of these renewal dates into your calendar. Membership renewals, domain or website renewals, insurance renewals. Have all of those renewals in your calendar so that you know when they're coming up. I say this because this happened to me recently, that an important plugin in my website didn't automatically renew, and I lost that plugin for a couple of days, and it was expensive to get that to get that back and to repair the damage it did to my website. And that was just a case of forgetting that I had a credit card change this past year, and I hadn't updated all the places that I have automatic renewals with my new credit card. So I've created a new file in Excel on where all my automatic payments are. So should I need to do a credit card change, I'll know all the places that my calendar, I pay a little bit more attention to when those renewals are coming up. So depending on how complex your things like your website get, if you've got plugins that renew at a different time than your domain and your website and your server payments, those all need to be kept track of. If all this sounds overwhelming, use a system like Wix, where you buy your domain and your website and any plugins all in one place. So it's one thing that renews every year, as opposed to my website's more complex. It's built on WordPress, and it's got a bunch of different plugins that renew at different times of the year. My domain is held here, my server is here. So it's a lot more renewing. If you want to keep all that renewing in one place, then use a system like something like Wix, which will make that a little bit easier when it comes to that. But all those things can be put in your calendar, depending on what kind of calendar you use. If you're using something like a Google Calendar, all of that can be kept, renewing annually so that you see the things that are coming up for renewal and you make sure that that happens. And you might even plug in reminders to yourself, like, have I done my professional development credits to renew by such and such date, right? Because depending on who you're registered with, you're going to have needed to accrue a certain number of training hours either each year or each 2 years. And you don't want to really leave that to the last minute, because leaving it to the last minute often leads to having to make choices about courses to take that might not be the course you really want to take, or you might not be able to really invest yourself in the course because you're in a rush to get those CPD credits to get your membership renewed. So that's something to plan for in advance so that you can choose the professional development courses that you want to take and be able to really get the most out of those trainings, right?
Yeah.
Particularly to Yoga Australia, they have lots of ways that you can renew your membership. So you don't have to necessarily pay for a continuing education course. You can log, going back to all these logs, you can log books that you read, you can log hours of assisting in classes. They've got free events that you can attend or do their webinars. So there's lots of ways that you can get your CE credits free. And if you're starting out as a really small business and there's not a course you're desperate to take right now, that's a good way to accrue those professional development credits without having to splash out on another course, right? Yeah. And you can also use these once you've completed your certificate. You can come back to these group coaching sessions, maintain an ongoing learning log, and you can submit that for your continuing education credits. Okay, so there's ways that you can do that, but you do have to keep track. So that's why building those record keeping habits now is really important. And so this is why you develop these habits in teacher training, right? You learn how to manage and maintain those records now during teacher training so that you can just continue on once you start in your teaching practice. So you're keeping a practice log, you're keeping a teaching log, you're keeping an ongoing learning log, right? And you start that now during teacher training. That's not just for kicks, that's for developing those strategies so that you can continue on into the future, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's great. We've got graduates who, I see their social media posts and they're posting, I just taught my 200th yoga class. How do they know? They kept records. Wonderful thing to celebrate, right? So know how many years you've been teaching, how many classes you've taught, how many hours of study you've done. Those are all really good things to know. For you, for your business, for your professional memberships, and for advancing your yoga teaching career, right? So if you're, 2 years down the track, you're going for a teaching position or you want to manage a yoga studio or whatever, you'll be able to say, I've taught this many hours, I've done these many hours of study, like this is my record of yoga teaching, right?
Yeah.
This is the reason to get into these habits now of managing your business. And depending on your goals for your business, it's going to allow you to look at things like what classes are working financially, what classes aren't working financially, and then you can make choices about that, right? So if you're keeping track of your income and expenses, you'll be able to know, this Tuesday night class, this is allowing me to put money back into my business or pay myself well. This Thursday night class isn't working so well financially, but these are people I love working with and I'm breaking even and I'm happy to keep that class going. Or I'm tired on Thursday nights. I don't want to teach a class for no money. I'm going to cancel that class. It gives you the information you need to be able to make informed choices about the direction of your business and what classes to keep, what classes to grow, what classes to change. You need to be armed with information in order to make those choices. And this is how you gather that information, is this basic record keeping.
Yeah.
Paperwork. right? It's not fancy. It might not seem as cool as teaching yoga classes and having great experiences with your students, but it is part of the foundation of developing a professional teaching practice so that you can bring yoga to more people, right? So I hope this has been useful in helping you set yourself up for success with paperwork and admin and record keeping. Um, that's all I had to share for today. So I'll let you get back to your evening. But hello to those of you who are listening to the recording or watching this video. If you have questions or want some resources or need a little bit of assistance in establishing your paperwork, that's what I'm here for. I'm here to help. Thank you so much for being here to have this chat with me. And here's to paperwork.